Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and good evening to some of my friends who watch me from Turkey. So it's an honor to be here today to present my research on how Syrian American emerging adults navigate identity and belonging. I would like to express my special thanks to Patricia and NYU Steinhardt for awarding me the Professional Development Award, which funded my presentation of my study at the ISSBD conference in Portugal with Scott this summer. We often assume that identity is fixed and something inherited from family, culture, or nationality. But for immigrant youth, identity is fluid, shaped by history, politics, and personal experiences. So Syrian Americans in this context, youth, they don't simply assimilate or resist, they actively construct their identities, responding to both US societal expectations and global events. So I'm going to say the last thing first now, instead of saving it for the end. So this research was conducted in 2022, not today. We explored how young Syrian Americans define their identity and cultural expectations, war and discrimination. But today, maybe their experiences might be different, slightly different and evolving, due to escalating anti-Arab and Muslim sentiment following the conflict in the Middle East, or renewed immigration debates in the US, or a shift toward a broader anti-Arab or Muslim solidarity. So when we ask how do Syrian American emerging adults negotiate their identities, we are also asking how does global oppression or global dynamics shape how young Syrians see themselves. What's happening? Okay, so this is the outline of my talk. This talk is going to cover why Syrian Americans, like why the specific population, why emerging adults, and the study's key findings and how these findings might look different today and what do they all mean. So Syrian immigrants are old but yet misunderstood Arab group in America. The first wave of Syrian immigrants date back to the late 1800s and merchants, traders, factory workers. So at first, the early Syrian immigrants were classified as white, but their experiences were not as white, still faced marginalization. Unlike other Arab groups like Palestinians, Iraqis, early Syrian immigrants also assimilated later. Unlike Lebanese or Palestinian Americans, they lacked strong cultural institutions because of historical isolation, also post 9/11 racialization, Syrian civil war, and maybe due to the 2017 Muslim ban. Why emerging adults? So this is it's a critical stage for identity development. Like adolescence and early adulthood is when identity solidifies, and also experiences of displacement shape self-perception. So in this study, most participants were not refugees, but they had families or relatives or extensions of friends directly affected by war. And the community belonging influences self-worth, so the way youth navigate inclusion or exclusion affects their mental health, career paths, and long-term identity stability. That's why emerging adults. So previous research on migration and cultural identity, especially like acculturation studies, they're mostly quantitative studies, and they're mostly interested in like patterns of formation, like what happens. But these studies so they want to fit into categories, like what kind of belonging do you have? But like they overlook the personal experiences and processes of navigating and constructing. So the how part of it, how question. So the current study, we wanted to see like how do Syrian American emerging adults negotiate their identities. We used a qualitative approach. We worked with 10 Syrian American high school and university students. Their mean age is 18. And we used two methods, semi-structured interviews. The topics we discussed were like ethnic identity, relationships, language, religion, discrimination, and self-perception, their personal experiences, and also identity maps, which I love. It's inspired and taken from Syrian et al.'s work in Muslim American youth. The participants visually represented their identities using symbols and words, so it reveals hidden conflicts or meaning-making strategies. I love this tool because I also have experience in like working with art tools through like refugees or immigrants, because in this approach, like you kind of co-construct the study with the participant. So this is what we told them. Using the materials provided with the survey, please draw a picture of your many social, ethnic, and religious identities. This should be an illustration of how you see yourself as a person. You're free to design the image as you wish. You can use drawings, colors, symbols, and words. And it's also a fun way. Okay, let's discuss the results. So out of the interviews, which lasted from 45 to 90 minutes, depending on the person, we used thematic analysis by Brown and Clark's method, and four major emerging themes came out, and with sub-themes. So the first theme was wish to belong to the US, and the sub-theme is US as future, being American as privilege. So many participants wanted to integrate, but felt racialized as other. Some embraced American culture, but felt a sense of conditional acceptance. I belong, but only if I erase parts of myself or something like that. And they saw a future in US, so they want to build their future in US. The second theme was sense of responsibility to Syria. So the Syrian war also heightened their attachment to their heritage, and also they felt like they have to give back to the community. Many of them engage in activism, raising awareness, or humanitarian work as well. This reactive identity becoming more Syrian due to global discourse set them apart from maybe earlier generations in other sense. And the third theme was about like creating a new self. So participants resisted binary identity. Some of them resisted the binary identity categories like Syrian or American, and instead created hybrid identities. We refer them as like hyphenated identities in Syrian et al.'s work. So examples of this is like language mixing, so using both Arabic and English, or like reinterpreting Syrian traditions in an American context, or like political identities that differ from their older generations. And the fourth theme is like desire to blend in, but for that, what they do. So what are the mechanisms? Some downplayed their Syrian identity in public to avoid discrimination, or others became more vocal as a form of resistance. We also used identity maps, and out of these maps, three identity patterns emerged: integrated, parallel, and conflicted identity. In integrated model, the Syrian and American identities blended seamlessly. In those drawings, there was like a new thing emerging, like a tree or flower or a symbol that has multiple parts, but kind of like blending. In parallel identity, those identities were compartmentalized, so they existed separately. Like, for example, a participant drew, let's say, one Syrian root, American branch, two distinct flags showing Syrian at home, American at school, or this also, you can see like different two flags. Third is conflicted identity model. So participants experienced alienation or tension, and like an example of this is like scribbled out Syrian flag, broken line separating identity house. And they said like, I love being Syrian, but it makes it harder. I want to prove that I belong. Okay, so what does that mean? we see a role of motivation and sense of agency rather than categorizing them like in acculturation studies, like focusing on behaviors. Identity maps reveal their internal meaning making and their motivation and agency in like constructing their own identity and their negotiations. And Berry's model, like acculturation styles, like integration, separation, assimilation, marginalization, is kind of like seen here, but this study is not about cultural adaptation. It's about their meaning making and identity perception. So it's more fluid and context dependent. Um, Also, you can see that like someone who is marginalized, who is doing well, also at the same time would still feel like conflicted. So they can coexist different than acculturation framework. But I want to add something about this. So that was conducted in 2022. Global events have intensified these identity negotiations. So impact of the conflicts would have changed the dynamics. So youth, if conducted today, might feel less or more politically aware today. And they're not just negotiating a national identity, they're part of a broader Arab Muslim struggle for justice. And their identity is shaped by both personal and global oppression, as I said, and identity is not a category, it's an ongoing negotiation. So the limitations with the study will be about like the sample size, it's not easy, and diversity of experiences among Syrian and American emerging adults. And like there was also different religions, but the experience of racialization was similar. So in future, we would compare it with different immigrant groups or contexts to see if similar patterns emerge. And wow, thank you. I think I'm done and I'm open to questions if you have any.
If you guys would like, you can unmute yourselves and turn your cameras on. But first of all, congratulations on this. This was a phenomenal topic to cover.
Thank you. Thank you. It was really fun to do. Um,
We have any questions? Or you did that great of a job where it's like, nope, I got everything.
I have a question, Jana.
Hi, Scott. Scott, thank you.
Hi, other Scott. I love this study. I think this is really, really incredible work. And I'm wondering, what are your thoughts about using two different qualitative methods, like the semi-structured interviews as well as the identity maps? Like, how do they add on to each other, and what are your thoughts about this
Mhm.
kind of work?
Thank you. Thank you so much for asking this because, like, if you don't, I didn't have to give more explanation. So, um, if you, I love using art tools in qualitative work because it's kind of like enhances the depth of what you talk about. But I think it's important to start with a at least semi-structured interview to be able to get some data to guide them, to get some idea about a sense of direction and something to be able to code them first. But identity maps were used as like an extension, like an additional tool to create some depth. Because like if I had used it on just identity maps, maybe it wouldn't be as good or rich source of data. But if I didn't use identity maps but just like used only interviews, then I would have missed on those like compartmentalization aspect of how they structure, because my question is about like negotiation and how they organize it. So it was important to see it on paper as well. And also it's like a it gives a participatory aspect to it too. So we kind of co-construct. It's not like I'm the leader or like I'm authority and I'm asking that, but it's like a two-way, it feels like a two-way interaction. Thank you.
So Peter had asked a question, he chatted one. Were there any identity maps that stood out to you?
Oh yes. First of all, I love the evil eye that I showed you. I loved it. But besides that, there was one striking map for me, that there was a girl and she drew a petal, and like each petal was like was coming from the root, and it was like the Syrian, and like the blossoming part of the petals were like the American, but also like Syrian as well. It was like a nice picture of how her roots come from and where she's blossoming at. I think it was beautiful. I mean, all of them are beautiful, but yeah, that was that stayed in my mind. And it's hard to, like interpret art material, because like it requires some experience, I think. But it's not just like we didn't only use the drawings, but we asked them like, what does that mean for them? So it changes our perspective as well, because like what you see may not be equal to what they want to talk about. So yeah, thanks for the question.